All right. Have you got the chat window up as well?
They said it was okay at 7:33.
Okay. There's someone in the waiting room, Les. Okay, so we're going to do just a few bits and pieces from how we're going as a Queensland branch, the results of the last AGM. I'm going to rattle down the EVIE infrastructure, which is quite lengthy, seeing as there's actually been quite a lot of update to that. And Graham or Mitch can give a chat about what they're going to do with solar on this place, which is a great initiative. Nathan's going to give his chat. I requested we have a chat about 4x4s.
I'll give it to Utes.
Utes, yeah, that's fine. And Jeff brought his Mini in, so we'll have a chat about that. All right, let's crack on. All right, so myself, Simone and Les all returned, but we ended up getting quite a few new general committee members, and most of those guys are here, so welcome and thank you for your assistance. I have already allocated some helpful measures to each person just to ease the burden on what's happening. I probably need someone to actually help Les from time to time as well, because his work outside of this can be full on, can't it, mate? So we'll discuss that in a committee meeting. We'll probably have 1 or 2 committee meetings separate to this meeting a month, just so we can make advancement. Next one, mate. Just how we're going as a branch, we have 161 members and 11 business memberships. There's a few people to follow up that have expired and a couple of people to catch up with that are on that sort of cusp of expiring, but interesting, like the same amount of people are joining as not renewing, so our numbers stay fairly stable actually. I think the next one is Facebook increase. So at the July meeting, I gave the stat for January 1st or December 31st to January 8th when our July meeting was. And this was sort of January up to July's trend. And just since July, we've added another 178 members just on Facebook. So there is people still interested out there in, and I think the Facebook medium is doing quite well. Right, so on to the EV infrastructure, which I know you all love so much and I always go on about, right? So it took me quite a while to put this stuff together because they have built nearly all of the QESH from what I can see. I think they've actually built all the stations, just some people in some of the regional towns who don't own EVs in that area, like no one's taken a photo, so I'll verify that by the end of, by the next meeting. But the latest Brisbane, we'll start with Brisbane then we'll do Queensland. This is at Skygate DFO, 4 50 kilowatt chargers. So I only found out about this yesterday. So EVIE networks, probably likely to open up by the end of the month. Still don't have a pricing structure for the 50 kilowatts from EVIE networks, so still waiting on that as well. But what that means, here's CBD, there's Toombul, there's Hamilton, and there's the Skygate one. Probably not as far with the actual gateway there. Probably don't have to come off the gateway as much as you would to go to Toombul or Hamilton. So it could be pretty convenient to go there. The very interesting thing is that now Brisbane is probably dominating how many DC fast chargers we actually have compared to all the other capital cities. So, you know, just count them on the side there. That is like strange, don't you think, that Sydney and Melbourne don't have anywhere near as many as that. So very good for Brisbane, really. Next one will be that at IKEA North Lakes and IKEA at Springwood, they're building right at the car park entrance in a really prominent position. They're putting in charging stations right there. And the
Stick them down the back. Otherwise you get ice.
these are the Quesh, part of the Quesh superhighway. So they'll have the same Eureka branding and stuff like that. So not really a different photo, but the first one was North Lakes. This is Springwood, taken today. All right, so you've seen it. I've posted this one before, and they were this is the phase 1. That's the phase 2. This is the ones that were already built, and we're just going to run through a picture of some of the ones that have been built since even the last meeting. So we're going to go north to south. We've got Port Douglas. You can just pretty much flick through these. Innisfail, Ayr. Now there is Proserpine, I think, that's meant to be, and Cardwell are meant to be in there as well. So we've come down a bit further, but there's two, like I said, there's probably no picture or no mention even on PlugShare that they're around yet. So I don't know whether they're not built or just no one's noticed and taken a photo. The previous one was Gladstone, Mount Larkham. This is at Gonalda, which is just north of Gympie. And then we have the Gympie one that is actually open. So you can see there's actually, for some reason, they have a different model of how they've got the charger set up depending on the locations, which is surprising. And this is Forest Glen. They have put the paint on, but I don't have any updated photo for that one. This is Ipswich. The caption for this photo was that is a poor design with the way a Tesla has, or like a Model 3 has to go in, because that's reverse parking and the charge port would be over this side. If you park in that way, then yeah, I'm not sure if it's good or bad, but
You have to drive too far forward.
I think so. I think so. You're probably on the bump. You're probably on the gutter.
Yep.
But who knows? I don't know. Maybe like wouldn't that come out and like come around? Anyway, we'll see. But there is also like 2 chargers there. So there's the AC one as well. So you're not really, if you do have 2 people wanting to charge, you are kind of like, and there's a car next to it. Anyway, that's at Ipswich. Other EV infrastructure, I just thought I'd mention this because it's not all just about southeast Queensland and Queensland itself, because eventually we're going to want to drive to other locations, and EVIE networks have said that they've got one at Bundamba, Yatala, which is about here. They're going to have one at Tweed Heads. One of these is Maxville, which is in here. This is Tenterfield and Armidale, that's run by NRMA. And further down here, I think it's here and here, or where is, oh no, that's one here. One there and one there is the Charge Fox, Coffs Harbour and Port Macquarie. So there's quite a lot of, like you can see, like it's coming along. There's not going to be any excuse soon for people not to be able to drive around anywhere they want to go. In Queensland though, we do need more sort of rural, so as a committee we might focus on that in the coming months. The costing for the charges, 20 cents for the Quesh, 40 cents for Charge Fox that isn't part of the Quesh. EVIE networks, 35 cents per kilowatt hour, 25 cents per minute, and still waiting for the 50 kilowatt. Tesla this week changed their pricing from 42 cents to 52 cents, and QUT, UQ and NRMA are still free for the time being.
Out of interest, I did some calculations this week. The Tesla number is basically equivalent to paying petrol for a 6.6 litres per 100 k's car.
Okay, at 52 cents?
At 52 cents.
Okay, 6.6, yeah.
So basically 6.5 litres per 100 k's, which is what my Skoda does.
Yeah, okay.
convenient, but not cheap anymore.
Yeah. Well, I know the other networks, like EVIE networks that we've had Andrew in here, he's like been quite frustrated that, you know, we still have like free charging and the Quest have the 20 cents charging. So when he's trying to deliver a network that has to make a profit because it doesn't have some of the funding or it has a large cost, so it's not subsidising the price. All right, next one, mate. Is that it? That's it. Excellent. That was the last slide. All right. Graham or Mitch, do you want to have a chat about what we're doing?
We'll both do it. Okay. Hello. Okay, so as luck has it sometimes, things just land in your lap. And this all started with a member. Oh, hello. We've lost the sound. Okay, so this all started with a member who upgraded to a Tesla 3 from his old Nissan Leaf. And out of that, he was given a Tesla wall charger, what do you call that, Type 2 sort of thing, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, so, which he didn't want because surprisingly he doesn't have a house to put it on. He lives in the vehicle. So, I know it sounds, when you hear the whole story, it makes perfect sense, trust me. Anyway, so, to which he didn't need this charger, so he gifted it to me to put on the shop. And I said, well, hang on, I've already got a Type 2 and I've already got a Type 1, and any Tesla can use the Type 2, so I don't really need it, you know. And he said, oh, you'll find a use for it. Anyway, so one thing led to another. We thought, it would be a good idea to have it here at the Peace Centre. So I'm talking to Mitch, and Mitch's company does the install of that sort of thing. And he said, oh, kindly install that for you free of charge. And then we expand on that and said, well, isn't it time that the whole had solar? And then a member has kindly donated the funds to put a 10 kilowatt solar on the roof here and a battery next year. So all of a sudden this thing grew from one free charger to putting solar on the building here, providing free energy for the Albion Peace Centre, and probably a bit of kickback money because I think it'll make more than they use. And it gives us public charging here, which I think is up to 22 kilowatts.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just put a subboard there and feed it as much.
Well,
the idea is to have one there and down over the next 12 months or so, maybe we put in a couple more and a couple of power points or something.
Yeah, so we
figure it out as we go.
Being an eco-based building and groups here, it seems smart to provide some solar energy and provide some battery storage and export to the grid. So it sort of ticked a lot of boxes for the ABA and the Albion Peace Centre. So we put together a proposal, and Mitch's installation company and Mitch's associates in the solar industry have all come to the party sort of thing. And of course the financial donation, you know, really kicked it over the edge. Have you got a question? The Greens have no idea. Does anyone know what my care factor is? Yeah, it's not very high. So anyway, look, whether they're here or not, you know, like a little funny story. When we were coming here years ago, we had electric cars sitting inside the hall. We were talking about it, and some of the Greens people came out and they said, "What's this?" We said, "Electric car." And I said, "There's no such thing, surely." Okay. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, so come back to the story. So this is where we're at. We're fortunate enough with a lot of things came together from one act of kindness, and it grew into something rather special. So with having said that, the benefits are going to be for the hall, no power bill, possibly income in rebate, a feed-in tariff. Yeah, we've got to go to their AGM and put the whole process to them, but I think that's pretty just a formality.
Month, I think.
Yeah.
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 And so we should be able to, once we hear back from that, we'll start rolling from there.
Yep. So it's all going to happen, and then the 10 kilowatt battery in 2021.
We're going to figure that out. So we're putting solar in first it's ready to go for a battery, and then we'll monitor the power consumption and we'll just size it from there. So make it a battery to suit the building.
Yeah.
Would be the best way forward. So.
Yeah, I think out of all the discussions, it was discovered that really, if you make it too big, it just becomes a problem. There is a bang for buck size, and it really wasn't about the bucks. It was about what's practical for everything involved, because you're only allowed to feed X amount into the grid, yada yada yada. Okay, so. The benefits for AEVA is that we're going to put a little donation thing on the charge thing. So if someone wants like a QR code, someone's happy that they've got a free charge and they want to donate a couple of bucks or whatever to the AEVA, boom, comes into our branch. So there's a little bit of a kickback there for us. But the best thing is that if we ever want to charge, here's another charger we can pop into and get anywhere between 2 and 22 kilowatts.
Yeah, well, like I said, the plan is to have a few out there because it's an electric vehicle club, so we want to have a few charges. And we'll just build it to suit. And over the years, hopefully we grow from, 2 or 3 or 4 or something.
It's a good start, and exactly. If we end up with 3 or 4 charging bollards out there, the only downside is there might be people that catch the train that ice in the thing, so I have to be a little bit aware of that. Don't know. We'll see how that works. The other thing is there might be some people that just, I don't think this will happen, but there might be some people just take advantage of it and just get free charging every day or something like that.
There was a sign here saying interest parking only for hall.
I don't know if the sign stops people. We're talking about...
I know, just saying, they can only hear when you talk into it, so if somebody else talks, share the mic.
Okay, sorry. Okay, the question was... people that park here during the day going to catch the train across the road sort of thing. So they could park that charging bollard in, which is a bit of a problem. We'd have to address that and see what happens,
We'll monitor.
Hang on.
Sorry, we'll monitor that, just keep an eye on it, and we'll just adjust over time. We might drop it down during the week. If there's somebody coming in and using it, we can slow it right down, and then AEVA nights kick it right back up again on the charging rate. So we'll just keep an eye on it over time and adjust it accordingly. There's ways to monitor that and control that, not just by charging people money. You can slow it down, things like that, which is how a lot of that smart technology works. So because it's a Tesla charger, we'll just do what we can and go from there. So.
Yeah. And that Tesla charger has been switched over to legacy. So if you got anything that'll take a Type 2 or you got a Type 2 adapter, bang, bang, in you go. If you want a Type 2 adapter, come and see me because I sell them. Anyway, I think, is there any other questions? No? All right. The other good thing about this is a bit of a media thing, so it gets a bit of notoriety for the centre and for the AVA. So, this helps build membership. It also shows that we're doing something productive. Yeah. All right. I'll hand this over. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. Thank you for the donors as well. That's extremely generous on their behalf, and to all those working on that project. Nathan, you're up now. Utes, 4x4s. Utes, no two-wheel drives.
No, well, pickups, utes,
Pickups, all right.
whatever we call it. A couple of other things in there as well. So, hi everybody, I'm Nathan. Wait for Les to get it all kicking off. I got a bit of animation and stuff, so you'll be clicking through pretty quickly. So click to the end of this slide. So go back one. For those who don't know, myself and my colleague Mark, we are sustainable transport consultants. We do this every day of the week for governments mostly, but also other folks along the way. And so, as we've said before, we're doing this to sort of help John out, help the whole organisation out as we monitor this stuff anyway. And we're going to deep dive into a topic each week as well. So I thought start with the news. So if we go on to the next slide, just thought I'd touch base on Model 3 seeing a price reduction, significant price reduction in the last week or so. We've seen also a couple of extra inclusions, particularly Power Boot and the HVAC update, which is giving basically a better efficiency for the climate control system, and that's increased the range, the ticketed range by a little bit. And so I went back to my invoice when I bought my car, which was in the first month of deliveries here, a little over 12 months ago, 13 months ago now, and it's still a little bit more expensive than what I paid for my car by about $1,700. So the prices went up from the beginning, went along and then went up by about $7,000, and now we've seen a $7,000 reduction, and it's now sitting at about $72,000 delivered here in Queensland for the same car for me. Sorry, that's a blue one.
I said, guess when I bought mine?
You bought yours at the top of the market. It's all right. Yours is worth a loads more. You've got someone there to admit. So I just thought I'd plot that on a map. So this is range along the bottom, and a recommended retail up the side, and a couple of key models that we're all pretty used to. And what we can see is the Model 3 now moves a little bit more range, just to 490 NEDC now, and then also comes down in price. So, you know, it's take your choice, choose your poison when it comes to electric vehicles that are in the new market at the moment. But I've seen online, anecdotally, a absolute ton of people saying that they've gone and bought a vehicle in the last week, consistently on all the social media platforms that I look on. So that's really a big deal. Go on another slot. This goes on for all models in the Model 3 range. The long range and the performance have all seen price reductions as well, not quite as much. The other models, Model X and Model S, have both seen also some price reductions as well, if you're that way inclined. A lot of talk at the moment about where is that car going to come from. Australian vehicles that you order today of the Model 3 will still be built in Fremont at the moment, but there is a reasonable chance that we will see Chinese-built vehicles sometime toward the back end of this year or early next. So watch this space, but I know absolutely for sure that if you ordered a Standard Range Plus today that was going to be delivered before the end of the year, usually December, it would be built in Fremont. Any questions on that one? Yes, please, Graham, and I will repeat what you ask.
I have a story that was relayed to me.
Sorry, say that.
You have to hand the mic around.
Oh, I can hand it out, yeah.
I had a story relayed to me that a person bought a second-hand, I think it was an S, and it had the upgrade pack, which was the, valet parking, whatever, all the extras you buy that are electronic or software,
Full
Yep.
self-drive.
Yeah. He bought them as optional extras, right? When he sold the car, apparently the next owner had that taken off him because Tesla claimed, or so the story goes, that Tesla claimed that those were belonging to the original owner of the car and don't get transferred on. Is there any truth to that?
To my knowledge, that is a urban myth. There was some people, when transferring a vehicle's ownership from owner 1 to owner 2 in the used car world, so person to person rather than via Tesla, that there was some decoupling of some software that was resolved in a short period of time afterwards, and it was due to that change of ownership. Because if you buy full self-drive on the vehicle, you are not able to take it from first vehicle and put it onto second vehicle. A lot of people are calling for that at the moment. It stays with the vehicle for full self-drive. Same thing for some of the smaller updates, things like heated rear seats. I can pay $500 and turn the heated rear seats on in the back of my car. I wouldn't want to. I live in Queensland and I don't care about what's going on in the back. My child's seats don't need warming up. But it stays with the car. So, bit of an urban myth, a little bit of noise about 3 months ago about that. I understand that there were some hiccups and they have been resolved.
I thought I'd take you a little journey on buses. We talked about buses a couple of months ago, and I've been involved in a large webinar process that's been going on recently, the Zero Emission Bus Forum that the UITP Public Transport organisation has been running here in Australia, and it's been attended massively across Australia and New Zealand for bus industry and bus-related government people. And so lots of really interesting stuff going on there. A lot of bits and pieces around the pace of change, the pace of technology change, what's required from a bus operator to switch to EVs, what are the questions that they're asking, what are their concerns, and lots of really cool experiences from around the world, because obviously when it comes to electric buses, Australia is a complete laggard. Like we're talking 60, 70,000 buses in China at the moment. Whole city, Shenzhen, completely 100% of their buses are electric, battery electric. The US starting to see loads and loads of battery electric. With the VW, you've been a very naughty boy, money has gone on to pay for a lot of electric buses in the US. And so there's lots to learn from there, and a lot of these sort of stories have been coming through. Really interested in what it's costing, and to switch to an electric bus, what are the total costs of ownership, and what's the compatibility issues with regards to, how far can I drive it? All the typical questions we all get asked: how do you charge it? What do you do with it? All this sort of stuff. We'll go to the next bit of the slide. So one of the things that did come around quite clearly is that every major city in Australia, basically barring Darwin, has got a plan for, already has orders in for, already has on the road some electric buses. New South Wales has recently committed to 8,000 buses being switched to electric over the course of the next 5 years. So that's a beast. There's a lot of work to be done behind making that happen at each depot and each organisation. And so there's a massive appetite for this shift. And one of the other things is there was a study done again in New South Wales, but I don't see it any different for any other metropolitan area, that a vast majority, in the order of 80% of the buses that run in the urban network, could be transitioned to an EV that is available to purchase today. This whole concept of, they won't work, and you know what? A lot of them will. So good news for us all when it comes to the uptake of electric vehicles in a very public space. Any questions around that one? Cool, whip on to the main act for the night. So we've recently talked about some other commercial electric vehicles, so I thought I'd start from there, and if we click on, we've done electric rigid vehicles a couple of weeks ago, which was really interesting, showing SEA and so on. The vans, that's definitely something that's really kicking off. I'm not going to delve into those today, but I thought I'd touch on the fact that that's really, really kicking off at the moment. And you might have heard the little van in the middle there, the Amazon van. They've committed to make 100,000 of those by 2025. 2030. I think it was a bit slower than that. And that's with their partnership with Rivian. And utes is where we're going to particularly focus tonight. And it's a slower market. Utes are very, very popular here in Australia. About 22% of the market, the new market, are utes. However, that market is quite small globally. In Europe, pickups utes aren't very common at all. I spent 10 years living in the UK, and you would barely ever see one. It's all vans, because the weather's garbage, right? So you need to cover the stuff up that you've got, whereas we've got really good weather, not so much a big deal. But we're going to take a bit of a closer look. So if we go to the next slide, the way I see electric utes in the world, and this is the world according to myself and movement, is that they kind of fall into three camps. They fall into the vehicles that are available today, the ones that are being going through a prototype, and we'll just hang on before we go there, and the ones that are likely to come about in the near future. So if we start with those that are available now, these are, as you can see in the pictures there, but things like converted Land Cruisers and converted other vehicles that are really tough utes, really workhorse utes, and they're being particularly developed at the moment for the underground mining space. Has anybody ever been underground mining before? We've got a couple of hands over here. I've been down a gold mine in the Northern Territory, and so one of the things that you have there is, it's hot, it's horrible, it's dusty, and you don't want any fumes because there's lots of people down there. And reality is everything's pretty much diesel driven that's down there, and then you have to pay lots of money to get ventilation happening. So if you can electrify, you can then take away that whole bunch of tailpipe emissions, and you can make a big difference. They already spend a fortune on the vehicles that go down in those holes anyway, so spending big money doesn't make a difference. It's not a big deal, and actually all the savings you get, like the ventilation savings, are actually a big win. So you're seeing a market at the moment, particularly in Australia, particularly in those major mining spaces. So Perth's starting to see a bit of this as well. South Australia, because there's lots of underground mining in South Australia. These manufacturers are basically taking chassis and electrifying them. They've only got about a 100 kilometre range, but they don't need much of a range. It's only about a 15 or 20k trip down the hole and back again, and they do that a couple of times a shift. And the vehicle can be charged in between those shifts times when they're doing work. So range is not important. And it's really specialist, so they're low volume and Australian built vehicles. This is what you can buy today. But the reality is you wouldn't buy one for the road. Okay? So if we move on to what is coming, we've got this, what I've called the prototype group. Okay? And these are generally American full-size trucks, your F-150 or larger size truck. Now, the F-150 market in the US is massive. They make 1 million F-150s only, just the F-150, each year in the US. And then you've got the Silverado, and then you've got the Ram, and then you've got all the other garbage that comes up behind it. So you've got a massive, massive market in the US for this type of truck, and so there's a massive electrification opportunity. And so this particular market has seen some really popular or high media models. So obviously the Cybertruck from Tesla. You've got the Rivian. You've got the Badger from Nikola, and we'll talk about that in a second. And you've got a bunch of others as well. Everybody's putting something out there. The F-150E. I don't know if you've ever seen that one pull a train. That's another thing that's coming out there, just basically the same as an F-150 electrified. So this is all happening. If these vehicles come to market, it is highly likely that they'll be in the $100,000 mark or more. So if you take the Rivian, which is the one that's at the top there, the launch price in the US is going to be about $70,000 US. $70,000 US is what it'll cost you to buy a long-range Model S. So if you then take that over to Australia, that's $130,000. Okay, that's what an Australian long-range Model S costs. So broadly, it's going to be in that ballpark of money. Don't expect it to be $60,000 is what I'm saying. There's also some questions about whether or not these vehicles, these really, really big vehicles, will come to Australia. The first question is, will they make right-hand drive? Because why would you make a right-hand drive? No one in England wants one. They don't fit down their roads, nor Ireland. That's some of the biggest market for vehicles in the developed right-hand world. India is the largest volume right-hand drive market in the world, and so that is not a market necessarily for great big massive trucks of this nature. And then you've got Japan, who's kind of not interested, and you've got Australia, New Zealand and South Africa. So there's probably not enough volume to really go and engineer in a right-hand drive vehicle for any of these models. Not saying it won't happen, I'm just saying there is a lot of headwind there in that space from a volume and engineering point of view. So these are mostly American trucks. If we move on to the next one, this is probably what I would call our likely future, and they are our typical ute-sized vehicles, a typical sort of 1-ton Hilux Ranger style vehicles that we're very used to, well-back style vehicles. This is all being driven by the Chinese brands. So you've got Great Wall, which I'll talk a little bit more about, but also some other key brands. Bang. Some other key brands who are taking donor Japanese models, like the white one up here is actually a Navara that's been donored and then has been brought into an EV, and before it gets to production, we might see ourselves with some more sensible pricing, but there's nothing confirmed yet. If we go on to the next slide, I'll just take you through some key models to watch for in this space. Talked before about the Rivian. From a likely to happen, this is highly likely to happen. The Rivian Rivian as a company is pretty solid, pretty sensible, some great technology going on in the vehicle, and it's massive funding. $500 million from Amazon, $350 million from Ford, basically $1 billion worth of coin in the hole to get a great car and an SUV as well. On this one, you might have seen, has got a really cool storage compartment just forward of the rear wheels down low that goes right across the whole entire body. And I think this is where we will see some really cool packaging, invention and innovation go with pickups and also SUVs as we go forward with electrification. It just gives you so much opportunity. And the Rivian is likely to be launched in the US at the end, towards the end of next year. So the Australian option is a long way away, into 22 at least. Next one quickly. Oh, yep, we've just lost one of the mics, but everybody can hear me. I thought I'd touch on the Nikola. Because a lot of noise has gone on around about Nikola, and I'm not sure if you follow this sort of stuff, but Nikola is a electric vehicle company. They've talked a lot about hydrogen as well. They've talked about large tractor trucks, full-on semi-trailer trucks, all sorts of bits and pieces. However, they've got some challenges, and recently their CEO has left the building because of indiscretions. They also basically got bought out by GM. So GM now has whatever IP they've got, I don't think there's a lot, and are going to take on what that happens. But what that means is the Badger, which is what this vehicle is here, is probably unlikely to ever see the light of day in America, and possibly never, and therefore probably never going to see the light of day in Australia. But just to give you a bit of a feel for one of the very large the vehicles that have made a lot of noise. Finally, if we move just on to the Great Wall, which I think is probably one of the most likely real vehicles we will see in Australia here sometime soon. It's a typical, typical one-ton ute, styled to try and compete with the Hilux and the Ranger and the similars. The Model P for pickup is going to come out as an ICE vehicle as well. It's going to come out with diesel, it's going to come out with petrol, and it's due to come out with a full electric position with a range in the region of 400 NEDC, 410 Ks NEDC is the most recent news. But look, we're still a long way away from what the vehicle really will be. Again, we've still got that right-hand drive challenge, but one of the benefits or one of the bonuses here and a strong feeling is when they launched this vehicle in Shanghai and then again in Beijing recently, the people that were standing around that, the staff from Great Wall, they all had a Cobras on and they all had, Aussie Outback looking gear. And it was this whole tilt towards this is being built for the Australian market. This electric vehicle is a rugged, rough, ready to go in Australia kind of market. So if that's any kind of indication that there's something coming our way, for me, that's probably one of the first vehicles that we will see in Australia in this pickup ute market. Any questions on pickups, utes, electric vehicle, electric 4x4 type stuff? We've got a general no. So we'll just move on to the last slide, which is one I've held in here for a while. Basically, what do you want to hear about? If there's any topic you'd like me to delve into, again, we'll continue to do a little bit of news and then a deep dive on a something. And if you'd like a deep dive on a something, let John or myself know, and we will boil it up for next week's. Yes, please. Graham's got an idea. Aviation. I could fly before I could drive, so I'm kind of interested in aviation. More than happy to have a bit of a delve. It's a little on the fringe of our normal work because we mostly do, if it's got wheels, then we're in. But we could do a little bit of a dig into aviation. There's some cool stuff going on in Adelaide at the moment with a particular company, and some cool stuff going on overseas. And
there's a company on the Gold Coast that's already got beavers flying in Alaska.
Magnets.
There you go. There's a company on the Gold Coast who's flying vehicles in Canada. So there's lots and lots of startups in that space. I think it's a little too early, but good luck to them. You've got to start somewhere, right? You've got to start somewhere. I haven't necessarily got wings on here. It's more a wheels thing, but we could go there if we run out of topics. Maybe it's a lot more research to do. Any other ones? Let us know. But anyway, got one more question up the back here.
Yeah, you haven't mentioned anything about workhorse.
About which? Workhorse. Yep, you're right. They're probably, so I didn't add them in there, I've obviously gone high level. They are certainly no closer to making a decent vehicle than any of the vehicles that we talked about here. Yep, but for a van. Yeah, so the question was, what about Workhorse, for the people on cameras? What about Workhorse? Yes, they are doing a bunch of different bits and pieces, but not a ute. They're doing a postal van, and look, as I say, the van space is very, very strong, both in Europe and in the US. And so, you know, unless they're bringing out a ute anytime soon, which I didn't really see any evidence of, I've left them out of tonight's conversations. But if you want to delve into parcel vans and delivery vans, I can go there if you like. We've got a lot of knowledge around that stuff, but again, if there's any other topics particularly you want to delve into, more than happy to. And that's pretty much me.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Pleasure.
Can you just make sure both screens are getting shared, because it just looks like the PowerPoint up on that. All right, now we're on to the Mini, but just before we do, I think I just want to make one point on the 4x4, because I think Francesco made this point to me a couple of months ago, and that's when they're making the pressings for the vehicles, that's a very costly exercise, and if they can make the pressings to have a battery option, then they get to sell more options, if that makes sense. So maybe what they're doing with like the Ionic, where they've done the plug-in, the hybrid and the full battery. So it kind of makes sense, doesn't it really, if you're going to go to the expense of building the moulds and pressing them, that you maximise what can come out from those moulds. So I would expect as more 4x4s and stuff come out, that they'll start looking at that as well. Whatever Great Wall are doing, I would assume that's pretty much going to be the same. Yeah. Okay, is all good, Les? Jeff, do we want to gather around the Mini while we talk about it? I can just give me a minute and I'll set up the cameras and stuff and we can have a chat.
4 weeks ago, I was lucky enough to pick up the first Mini electric in Australia. And I thought I'd just bring it along and just tell you a little bit about my experiences with it. I've actually been waiting for this car for a very long time. I knew about it last year and I put some money down in January. And when I rang them up, I said, can I put some money down on the Mini electric? And they said, the what? So the Mini electric. Just a second. And he went off. I said, yes, you can do that. We don't have any forms, we don't have anything, we haven't really been told much about it, but I'll take your money. So I did. And then, you know, with everything that's happened this year, it's been a bit of a wait, but yeah, it's finally in my hands. So I spent 9 months basically looking up everything I could about the car, looking at every video, doing all the specs, everything I could. So I actually knew more about it than the dealers. And when I went to the revealing, they kept looking over and saying, is that right? Is that right? They'd ask people. But anyway, so just to let you know my thoughts of the little car. The first question that everybody always asks, and we all do the same, how far does it go? You know what my answer is? Far enough. This car's done something that a few have done, but not very many. They haven't really gone for that huge range number. What they've done is they said, this thing's a fun car. People don't buy it to sort of just poodle around. They want to go fast, they want to have fun. It's a fun car to drive. So they put in just enough batteries to be useful and still keep the weight down. And what it means is this little thing handles like a go-kart. I'm going to say it. Everyone says it about a Mini. It's true. Handles like a go-kart. It's a lot faster than they claim. 0 to 60 miles an hour is 6 seconds, and it's 14.8 second quarter mile. It actually runs into the rev limit, the speed limiter before it hits the end of the quarter mile, which is pretty rare for a car. The other thing is it's supremely comfortable. You wouldn't think really that a Mini, which is bouncy little tight suspension thing, would be comfortable, but it is, and it's in that strange way where if you hit a bump, you're over and done. The bump's finished. Move on. It's got comfortable seats. It's got really nice grabby seats. They've shod the thing in performance tyres. Again, for this sort of segment, normally you get those high efficiency tyres. These things are Goodyear Eagle asymmetric 3s or whatever it is, and they hang on like there's no tomorrow. But actually, getting back to the range, probably everyone does ask. They say, the Americans gave it a range of 110 miles. Now, the first time I was driving it, I think I still had 40% left in the battery when I went past 170k. So it goes a lot further than they say. I'm averaging, and this is not in hypermiling, this is normal everyday driving with a fair bit of sort of taking off every now and then quite quickly. I'm getting about 250 kilometres per charge. You could easily get in town, if you were really careful, 280. So it actually does go far enough.
What's the watt hours per kilometre?
10.5.
10.5.
Yeah. 10.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometres. The lifetime average of the car at the moment is 12.6 because I spent the first week being a silly person. So
That's good though.
But yeah, it's the last couple have been 10.5. So it's also a very, very small car. So on the freeway, for example, it's got very little area. Yes, it's a brick, but the amount of energy you use is your area times the coefficient of friction. So it's actually got very little air to push. So it does very well. The other big benefit is small battery. I charge overnight. I plug it in. I've only got an 8 amp charger because they didn't go for the full 10 because they said they had a few problems. If you're trying to draw all the current, you can have some issues. 8 amps out of the thing. I plug it in. Every 3 or 4 days I'll plug it in, and the next morning it's all full.
Are you planning to fit a charger?
I actually, for those who couldn't hear, the question was, am I planning to fit a charger? I was looking at it and then I was thinking, in terms of what advantages it would bring me, I actually live quite close to UQ, to that nice free fast charger. So if ever I did desperately need a charge, I'd quickly pop over there. But I haven't even come close. As I say, I don't charge it every day. There is one thing that I think is a bit strange about it. I call it the GOM, the guessometer, and that's the range. Things like the Kona and the Ioniq are brilliant. If they say you'll do 120 kilometres, you'll do 120 kilometres. This thing, even after my current driving, when I just pull out the thing, it's 100%, it says 175 kilometres. And I say, no, that's not right. And then I'll drive for about 10-15 minutes, it's now 180 kilometres. Okay? And then you keep going and you keep going. It's not until the last little bit where it starts saying, yeah, maybe we'll sort of actually work it out. So that's the one thing I don't really pay much attention to because it's not very good. Other than that, this car, they've only got one version in Australia. Overseas, in America, England, they have 3 levels. This is effectively level 3, but without the sunroof, because for whatever reason we don't want sunroofs in Australia. But it gets all the bells and whistles, which is why in the press people have said, oh, it's $14,000 more than the equivalent petrol. No, it's $4,000 more than the equivalent petrol because it's got $10,000 worth of options. So it's actually not as expensive as a lot of people make out, and hopefully next year they'll bring out the cheaper version. So
Level 1.
The level 1, yeah. Because I think a lot of people would rather have fewer bells and whistles and make a cheaper car. Everything else is identical. Same drivetrain, same batteries, you name it. You just don't get the fancy stereo, which I'm getting too old for that anyway. You don't get the nicer seats and things like that. There's the heads-up display, which is actually that's my favourite part of the whole car, to be honest with you, the heads-up display. I never thought I'd like one. People with Konas probably could back me up on that. I love the thing. And that's it. I just absolutely love this car. It's such fun to drive. They've really, really done a good job on it. It's every time you get out of it, you've got a smile on your face.
regen?
Okay, question about regen. Yes, it has 2 levels of regen, and they've also got a little trick, and that is they have a coasting point. Now, in sport mode, you're not really going to ever coast because that's not the point. But if you were to go into mid or green, they actually widen the coast point. So you can quite easily find the part on the accelerator where you're using no power. You've got 2 levels of regen, and they actually call they talk about the regen in terms of deceleration. So low level deceleration is 0.11 G, and high is 0.2. And it's actually got that's a fair bit. When you take your foot off the accelerator, it's like putting a good dab of brakes on. And for the first little bit, I must admit that I probably looked a bit silly, because you'll be accelerating thinking, oh, I'm going too fast, take your foot off, and now I'm going too slow. But after a little while you get used to it, and it really is one pedal driving. Your speed is just moderated by your position on the accelerator, and you can actually have a lot of fun just going along at the nice speed limits and not having to go too fast. The only time you ever touch the brakes is it doesn't automatically put them on like I think the Leaf does. If you come to a stop downhill, you just put the brake on. Or it'll go down slowly because the regen's still on, but it won't actually stop the car. Similar to uphill.
So it will regen to 0?
Yes, it regens to
flat 0 volts.
Well, it'll regen to realistically 1 or 2 kilometres an hour, but by the time you get there, it's effectively stopped. So yeah, as I say, you just don't have to worry about it, and you don't have to slow down and go around corners. So.
How do you select the regen?
Actually, I can show you. There's I don't know if you can see in here, but the nice little old-fashioned aircraft type switches. On the left-hand side, there's a switch. There's no paddles like some of the things like the Konas. To be honest, I put it into that light one once just to see what it was like, and I never do it again. It always defaults to the high-level regen because that's the one they want you to put it in because that gets the most benefits. Yeah, like on the little mini connected app or something like that, I'm averaging 6 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometres regen. So I don't know. To be honest, I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's just what it says. That's just my normal driving. The other thing,
single drive by the front.
Single drive by the front, 135 kilowatts. And that's the other thing, because I think John was mentioning the Hyundai Ioniq. The thing they did about this car was it's produced on the Oxford plant, and it's identical in 90% of it's identical to the petrol and the diesel car. They can press a button, and all that happens is instead of a diesel engine being pushed in, it's an electric. And so they can actually bring up and down. And at the moment, a third of the production in the UK is electric. So they're making 1 every 62 seconds or something like that, and 1 out of every 3 of them is electric. They've had really quite a large amount of interest in it from all the way around the world. I mean, they've got 6-month waiting lists in America for these things. But yeah, it's a great little car, but little silly things like that's where the petrol cap would be, so it's exactly the same, but it's now it's a CCS2. So it's just exactly the same as a normal Mini. Even the boot, they've cleverly put the batteries underneath the floor and in the petrol tank, and they just put in as many batteries as they could fit in there. And the boot is identical. There's no different. In fact, the whole space inside the car is identical to the normal Cooper S. There is no difference whatsoever. The only other
lithium-ion battery? Lithium-ion?
Yeah, they're the CAT-L cobalt, lithium cobalt or whatever it is. So, but then the new CAT-L ones. So they basically managed to fit. It's smaller than its big brother, the i3, in terms of the physical volume of the batteries, but the same. They talk about 33.6 kilowatt hours, but in i3 terms, that's the 94 amp hour. So it's basically it took the engine straight out of the i3S. It took the batteries or the controller out of the i3S. It's got the new CAT-L batteries for volume, so they could fit the same amount in a slightly smaller space.